welcome to the second episode of the Get Psyched show. Today I was joined by Erin Gillen, a recent law graduate who now works for Scottish Athletics. We discussed balancing a degree while following your passions, the work around mental health in athletics, transferring skills and building networks, and the importance of giving young people a voice. I hope you enjoy. Hi Erin, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Thank you so much for joining me today. Erin, could you give us just a wee bit of a background and a brief overview of sort of your, I guess, short career so far, but what you've been up to so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the recently appointed National Club Manager for Scottish Athletics. I've been in the job for 4 months now, I think, by this point. First job after graduation. So I studied law for 4 years at the University of Strathclyde and then decided to change my career and become a sports manager, which was something I've always been keen on, and I've worked in sport for years, and it's just, it so happened to work out for me, which is really, really good.
Awesome. What are some of the other roles you've had in sport that allowed you to make this change?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the past 6 or 7 years, I've been heavily involved in volunteering in sport. So it's ranged throughout. I have done loads of work with Sport Scotland, and I've been involved in the majority of their youth projects over the past 6 years. So I started myself as what we would say a young ambassador, which is a leader in sport, and it's about getting people within your school and local community. And that really sparked the interest to sport and the avenues you can go down. And then I progressed into, you'll know yourself, George, the Young People Sports panel. And on the panel, it was a great opportunity to have my voice heard across Scottish sport. I have a massive passion for athletics and sport, and that's where I've kind of nurtured the love for sport overall. So I went on to be on the panel. My focuses were on women and girls in sport initially, and it was looking at the barriers that females face, and it's something I continue to work as a Fit for Girls tutor with Sport Scotland, which is really exciting that I still get to do that and balance it through working as well. And then I went on to mentor yourself on the Young People Sports panel, which was a phenomenal opportunity because it was more of a leadership role, and it was looking about supporting the young people through their journeys and how they can make a difference within sport. That really sparked my interest, and I went on to work with Scottish Athletics and start their Young People's Forum, again another youth project, and it looked about engaging young people within athletics and giving them a voice. So using that model that Sport Scotland created and implementing it within my sport was a dream of mine, and it's really sparked my interest for my career, and I got to work with the organisation and see how a sporting organisation works. And it absolutely sparked my passion for my job just now, and I was very fortunate that this job came up when it did, and then I just took the chance and went for it, and here I am.
Amazing. So as you've just said, you've got a huge range of experience across different areas in sport. So we're going to touch on those a wee bit later. But you were doing all this while you were still a student at university and studying law as well, which for most people will know isn't an easy degree. It isn't sort of one class a week. It's a lot of work, a law degree. So how did you find balancing all these amazing opportunities and all this time to put into your sport as well as completing your degree?
Mm-hmm. I won't lie by saying it was easy. It wasn't a walk in the park at all, but I think I knew my passions and I knew where I sat, and I really wanted to pursue extracurricular work alongside my degree. I never wanted to let that fall because of the amount of skills and experience and just experiences that I got from that, the friendships that I've made. And university was a challenge. It was tough. It was a tough 4 years, and obviously we were the cohort that got hit by COVID as well. So moving everything online was definitely difficult. But I think how I managed it the best was just organising my time to a T. And that's not to say that I had it perfect every single time, but just keeping really up to date with your emails and your diary and looking at where you can fit times in, but also making sure to take time for yourself, which I definitely fall down and probably didn't take enough time for myself during my degree. So making sure that you're given enough time to your extracurriculars, your passion, your education, and also your self-care was just so important to me. And I think by probably about 4th year is where I probably got it right. You know, it was a learning curve for myself, and it's just about keeping in contact, keeping communicating with those extracurriculars. So working with Sport Scotland, working with the young people, and having that support system around was really, really important, because I don't think I would have made it through without the people around me as well. So yeah, it takes a lot, you know, it takes an army, I suppose. So yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I think what you're saying about self-care is really important, because I think once you get first or second opportunity, a lot more can come, and you just want to say yes to everything because you don't want to miss out on these opportunities.
Yeah.
So you almost put aside
Absolutely.
that time for yourself sometimes, and it's just like, no, we'll do the next thing. What were your sort of ways of either taking a break or just like de-stressing or just turning off from everything and taking that bit of self-care? What ways did you do that, and what was most effective to help you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at first it was finding the time in the year, for example, that you know you're going to be quieter. So looking at after exams or finishing up for the semester. So your semester is an intense 12 weeks, but you do have that leeway in between, which was really, really positive. So it was filling my time there with going away on day trips and holidays and things with my friends. But in terms of the day to day, it was making sure that I was getting outside, I was walking. I luckily have a wee black lab, and it was great to get out and walk her. And then also just decompressing at night, I think, was so important. So making sure to switch off from everything you were doing in the day, either reading a book or listening to a podcast or watching a movie or whatever I chose to do. Yeah, and also I think my friends as well. So I had a really good supportive network of friends in uni and also from high school still that I'm still friends with today. So those people around you, making sure that they're encouraging you as well and you're encouraging them likewise, to take that time for yourself and, go for that coffee or, take that 15-minute break and just get away from the books is really, really important. Also, to link into the whole theme of this, I suppose sport and physical activity. So getting out, going to netball or going to athletics, going for a spin class, getting to the gym was really important. And I made sure to filter that into my diary as well, because it was that relief. Like, you don't need to think too much about it when you're there. You don't need to think about the next coursework you're doing or how to analyze something or what you've got coming up in sport in the voluntary basis, for example. So yeah, it was just making sure to really balance all that together and try to do as much as possible. Like I said earlier, like, it wasn't 100%. Some days I was pretty stressed and I could have been doing with an extra walk or an extra wee bit of me time, but just making sure to know that yourself, like, like it's really important, and kind of live through that ethos yourself. So if you're going to tell people it's great, then you need to live by that, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think a point you made about sort of like completely switching off, having sport where you've not got a phone or distraction or you're thinking about something else, you're only focused on that one thing you're doing, and being with your friends is such a good way.
Yeah.
And it can be so easy when you're like in bed at night and you've got the email app on your phone just to like, oh, I'll just check this or I'll just get to this, which the one off is fine, but it's when it's like all the time and you don't have that proper switch off, it can be really difficult.
Absolutely. Like you said, like, your email app can turn into another form of like social media, for example. So you would be checking that while you're checking everything else. And I do find that really difficult. So it's good now that I've got a work phone. So like my work is separate. Also your WhatsApp group. So like you said, yeah, it's just really important to try separate yourself from that, I think.
Yeah, I think it like the email app on my phone has always got to me. And sometimes if I'm going like earlier this year, I went on holiday and I was like, I'm not replying to anyone. Like I've said I've not organized anything, so I just deleted the app. And it was like, if I really need to check something, I can go on computer or something else. And it's just like that small switch can just like help so much because you can't check it. So it's a good way. I think as well, being at university, it's this idea that you're just there to get your degree, but in fact you learn so many skills. What are some of the skills that I guess you've picked up through your degree, and I guess learning about yourself and how you work best? What are some of the skills that you've been able to translate into your job now and into your sort of everyday life now?
So with my degree, it was very full on, and immediately first thing that comes to head, I suppose, is time management. Obviously you need to be quite on the ball with it, with the amount of coursework that is coming up and scheduling in when you're going to do your readings and your revision and everything like that. As well as the traditional time management, I suppose it's building those relationships. So building the relationships with my tutors and with my fellow students and with other lawyers within the field, and making those connections. At university at Strathclyde, we didn't have like a specific legal placement, so it's really about engaging within that network. So going on to LinkedIn and just your wider network and making those connections as well was really important. It was over the 4 years. At first we had no idea, I suppose, especially I didn't know like how long readings would take me, what kind of learner I was. So really figuring that out initially was brilliant. And then how to be more organized. So your organizational skills, again, that links into your time management. So just being on top of everything as you go along and trying to do as much research, I suppose, as to your following year or your following semester coming up. And then lastly, I would probably say is that sort of teamwork, communication and connection networking. So you'll see this. I'll probably repeat myself later when I talk about but just in general terms of making connections for the rest of your life, I suppose, building those networks and the relationship building, which is so vital to the role I've got just now. Understanding different people as you're going along and editing yourself, I suppose, to who you're speaking to. So if you're speaking to a fellow student or if you're speaking to a lecturer, you need to speak differently, I suppose. So yeah, just being on top of that and trying to manage that the best you can was really good learning curves for me during uni.
Yeah, nice one. And I think like when you come from school and you have your sort of whole week timetabled for you and people catching you
Mm,
up if or teachers catching you up if you need to get something submitted, and then a year later to suddenly you need to turn up and you need to submit it all by yourself. Like we're not going to chase you.
yeah,
It's quite a
yeah,
difference. Um, if you've not had much
yeah,
experience of that, and like building your network you spoke about. So many people are able to get a degree now, especially in this country. So you have to have more on top of that of what you're doing. So you talked about going out and sort of
absolutely.
linking with people using LinkedIn, for example. Have you got an example of where you were able to use your network that secured your placement?
Yeah, so funnily enough, when I was in uni, I got a legal internship with Sport Scotland. So I was in the fortunate position to sit alongside the legal team for a number of weeks and learn everything about the organisation. It was an in-house position as well, which was really interesting because I generally don't think it's spoken about that much, but in that sort of role, you get to learn a wee bit of everything. So it's sort of the jack of all trades about law in an organisation. Linking in my passion for sport and linking in my degree was a phenomenal experience. I still keep in contact with the lawyers I worked with in that placement, and they even read my dissertation and supported me through my assignments throughout. So they, I that was such an enriching experience for me, and I got a lot out of it, and they gave a lot to me, and I'm so forever grateful for that. Because I was a big stress head in my dissertation, as I'll probably chat about. And yeah, it was just really good to have that kind of rest of mind, the reassurance that someone's looking at it, and someone that is a lawyer is looking at it, and they're saying it's okay, so it must be all right, which was really nice.
That's good. Yeah, and I think as you find like if you show you're passionate about something and want to improve, asking people for help, if they see your passion, they'll be more than happy to help because it maybe reminds them of
Yeah,
when they were younger or gives them something interesting to read about, something different from their everyday. So um, definitely,
absolutely.
yeah. Um, moving a wee bit away from your degree because you've got so much experience in
Mm,
sport, I want to find out more about it. So all these opportunities that you
mm.
had, especially when you're a student with Sport Scotland and Scottish Athletics, has your sort of viewpoint or perception of how sport can be used in society changed from, say, when you were leaving school to the position you're in now?
Yeah, I suppose when I was younger, I just reaped the benefits in terms of feeling great about sport and having those friends around me and just being in that like enriching environment. But moving forward, like working in sport and learning, like I suppose the demographic that you're working with and the people that you're working with is really, really exciting and like it goes to show that sport has so much more power than just the physical activity. So as something I like to talk about a lot is using sport and physical activity as a tool to enrich something else. So I am currently on the Changing Lives module with Sport Scotland myself. So it's looking at how sport and physical activity can change someone's life, transform someone's life, make someone's experience better. So some people's priority won't be getting out to the gym or won't be getting up and going to a sport session at your local community club. It will be, can I afford food and put it on the table? Can I, can I turn the heating on this Christmas or this winter? So it's been such an experience to learn and empathise with these communities and understand more about the tool in sport and how it can bring people together and give them some sort of outlet and peace of mind, as well as the general challenges they go through. Sport is a phenomenal tool, and I'll scream it from the rooftops till the day I die, I suppose. Like, it can be used in so many different ways, and it's great for your mental health, your social health, and just all the experiences that you gain around it. So working in it, it's been such an amazing experience to see how positive it can be. And that's not to say that sport is all positive and all brilliant. I've had a really great experience in sport, but when you're able to get that great experience, it is life changing.
Amazing. Yeah, and I guess where you're working now with Scottish Athletics, that's your sport. I guess everyone has their own sport in some way. So how did you get first involved in athletics? How old were you? Where did you start out?
So I didn't do athletics when I was young. I didn't do it in primary school. I think I dabbled in cross country for a while, and as you'll know, George, I'm not a runner, so that wasn't very successful,
I
as
think
we'll
I
see.
think
So
everyone's forced
my
into
first
cross country, aren't they, at some point?
Absolutely. Not to say cross country is not great. It is great for people. Just about that. Just it wasn't my sport, mind you. So I think my first experience of athletics was in high school. Funnily enough, so I got asked. I was always the stronger kid, I suppose. I gave it on my all, I suppose. So when I was playing a contact sport, I would probably be a bit boisterous and throw myself about a wee bit. So the teachers were like, "Do you know what? We'll give her a shot put and see how far she can throw it." And generally, that is how that started. So it was my PE teachers in school that were like, "Right, we'll let Erin try some throws, and then we'll take her to what we call county sports." I don't know if you have that where you're from, but it's just like a sort of recreational school competition, and you go and you compete. So it was the first time I ever tried shot put and discus, and that was my two sports that I went on to do, and I loved it. I was able to throw it far, and I was able to, I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. And I think, looking back, reflecting back on that now, is that a teacher saw me, saw my talents, and connected the dots and was able to make that kind of pathway for me. And I got to a certain age that I loved the sport, but I wasn't actually in a club or anything yet. So I wanted to start building that relationship with clubs and communities. And my first initial thought was to start an athletics club in my high school. And when I was like 14, 15, that's what I'd done. So my active schools coordinator was brilliant in setting that up for me and got me a link into my coach at the time, who was John Owens. And John and my active schools coordinator, my PE teacher, are probably the whole reason that I got into athletics. They sparked the interest for me, and they made such a warm and welcoming environment that I am so grateful for to this day. Everybody that knows me knows that athletics crazy and I absolutely love it. So it's really all down to them for sparking that passion. So I made the connection in with John, and he mentored me for about 2.5 years into my coaching pathway. So then I went on and I done my coaching assistance and my level 2 coaching as well. So then I got connected into Springburn Harriers about 5 or 6 years ago, which is my club just now. So it's a club we're based in East of Bartonshire in Glasgow. And I've never left. I've just seeming to work my way up the kind of ladder a wee bit. So different coaching qualifications, and then I now sit on the committee. And I was their first young person to ever sit in a committee under the age of like 30 or something like that, which was quite wild. And it was quite innovative at the time for us at Springburn a few years back to have a young person sit in the committee and be able to give their voice. So at the club now, still, I coach the under 11s. I have my own wee group, which is brilliant. And I also have 2 coaching assistants that I kind of look after and nurture, I suppose, which is funny because, they're fully grown adults, but we're a great dynamic, like a great wee team. And then I sit in the committee and look after the club's social media. So that's kind of how I got involved in athletics. And I'm now not an athlete. I don't compete anymore. I would love to get back into it, mind you, which I probably will do in the next few years. But in terms of like my own passions, it's probably weightlifting at the moment and going to the gym more often. But I still love athletics and everything that involves in athletics. So yeah, coaching is my passion, and that's kind of how I started. And from there, it was just volunteering opportunities. So sitting on sports councils and committees and just having my voice heard, I suppose. I'm a wee bit nosy, and I love to find out more information about things all the time. So just being there, being in that environment, and just understanding things a wee bit more has been brilliant. So that's kind of how I got involved in athletics, and yeah, I've stuck at it. So I'm 22 now, so it's about 7 years I've been involved, it's just been an amazing experience.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'll come back in a wee bit just about sort of like your involvement in these decision-making positions. But you've got all this
Yeah.
experience coaching athletics, and what athletics is different to other sports. Obviously, the sport's similar, but you're never influencing your opposition, so you're always competing, I guess, against yourself and other people's scores and times, but you can't
Yeah.
influence how they perform. So it's always about yourself.
Hmm.
So as a coach and having completed your coaching levels, have you ever sort of come at it with an angle of sports psychology and looking at how sort of you can help develop a young person mentally or athlete mentally, as well as just focusing on the physical development?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really fortunate to sit at Springburn and work like with Springburn, and our ethos as a club is that we're athlete centered, so we cater for the athlete as a whole person. And more recently, we've partnered with Sam H, and we've signed up to the charter, which has been brilliant. So a massive focus of us just now is looking at our young people's mental health and looking at how we can support that going forward. It's a very much a hot topic, I suppose, in the past few years, and people are more welcoming to talk about it, even though it's something that's always been around. And positive mental health, negative mental health, and looking at how we can support that young person moving forward. So as much as they're developing physically, it's making sure to have those wee conversations and be that person that your young people can talk to. So as simple as, how are you doing tonight, and like taking them and chatting to them, or asking them further questions about, oh, how did you feel about that. These simple first start engagements have been really, really good, and our athletes have taken it to it so well, which has been brilliant. Asking each other how they are, and really opening up that mental health conversation is probably the closest tie to sports psychology we've had. Our under nines and under 11s have gone through a summer program with Sam H as well, and they learned how to understand what mental health is a wee bit more. And we've started with Movember as well recently, and looking at to educate not only our coaches and volunteers, but our parents. Sorry if you heard that buzzing there. Our parents and our athletes, as well as everyone just involved in the club, about mental health and having that mental health conversation. So I'm very fortunate and very passionate about mental health in our sport, that I've been able to do that and sort of enrich that within our community, which has been brilliant.
Obviously, I think it's really important that you're not just sort of giving these opportunities for young people to sort of learn about mental health and understand it a bit better, but making it a whole sort of club ethos. So I think a partnership, as you said, is such a good way of doing that, because if you're showing yourself as coaches and being role models to young people that this is who we are as a club, this is what we're going to focus on, that goes down to them as as a person who can influence them. Looking at your the coaching
Absolutely.
levels that you've done with Scottish Athletics, have they ever
Mhm.
taught, what's the sort of focus in these levels? Is it only physical, or are you talking about environment, sort of creating a positive environment? Are you looking at sort of how to develop a young person just outside as a complete athlete, or is it very athletic specific?
Yeah, absolutely. I think moving up your ranks in coaching, for example, I'm now a coach, an athletics coach, as we would say. It's changed from level 1 and level 2. It gets more technical, and that's when you focus more thoroughly into the athlete's technical development. But from your jog leaders, which is now your LURF and your coaching assistants, there's definitely always that conversation about building that positive environment for your athletes and making them want to come back to the session. Just being as open and welcome as possible. One thing that always resonates with me is using those step rules. So you step in, you adapt to your session. So if a child is uncomfortable, if they're not wanting to have that, if they're not wanting to not compete, sorry, if they not want to participate, maybe finding out why they don't want to participate and having that conversation with them, building that positive relationship with your team and the other people you're working with around you. And again, like you said, being that positive role model. So if you've got a great relationship with the people you're working with, like your other volunteers and your other coaches in that environment, it's showing the young people and our athletes that, this is how it is, and this is how you build relationships, and this is the positive outcome it can have. So it's athletics is really on the ball with that, I think, generally, and it's something that I've always been taught, especially even if it's not just from the coaching course itself, but the people that have nurtured me on my coaching pathway. So those really good coaches that are sitting around me have really encouraged that throughout the journey as well. So yeah, it's been brilliant. I think, funnily enough, again and again, we're always asked, like, what skills have you gained from this? And I think one of the ones that I always like to share is just a level of empathy that I have with other people. So when you're building those relationships, working within those networks, working within the environment, you have to be empathetic to other people's situation, other people's needs and wants. And compromise is key, I suppose, in everything that you do. So having your voice heard and understanding an environment better and coming to a compromise of how you can work together to make that, to action that and make that happen is brilliant. So you'll know yourself as a young person, you come in and you want this changed, and you're like, I want this to be better, I want this to be better. And there's only so much that organisations and people supporting you can do. So I think being empathetic to that situation and also demonstrating empathy to other people has been vital, and just being more understanding. And we always talk about active listening and listening to people and being that person that people can turn to, even if they just want to chat or just want to moan about something or rant about something. Just being involved in that conversation and just actually listening to the person is really, really important. It's helped me in everything that I've done, especially now as a national club manager. A massive part of my role is to build relationships with my clubs and be that support system for them from the organisation. So understanding their needs and wants of everything to do with their club is so vast. So just making sure to kind of separate that. So I'll have what I maybe want a club to do or would love a club to love to see a club doing. But if they're not at that age and stage to do that at that stage, then that's totally okay, but we can work towards it. So slow and steady wins the race, as they say, and just being that more empathetic person. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess supporting sort of organic growth and letting things happen when they do happen while giving that support. I think you made a good point about being a young person. You can almost you come from sort of a position where you maybe don't understand the full picture because you've not got that experience. So you come in almost as like a devil's advocate straight away. You're like, why is this the way it is? Why can't we change this? Why can't we do this better? And I think it's a good thing where you describe this empathy where, okay, yeah, you've got all these ambitions and things you want to change and keep that desire, but then understand why things are the way they are as well. And then you can sort of find that bridge between them where let's change this small thing and then it can have a bigger effect in the long run. So yeah, I think that's a really good approach to have. I guess coming on to the sort of voice for young people, obviously you've mentioned a bit about all these opportunities you've had to be in these leadership roles. What would you say is why would you say it's important to have young people in these positions and involved in decision making?
So this is one of my passion projects, George. This is something I've been so passionate about throughout my development as a young person in sport and just generally. It's just, I think when you look at a demographic that you're working with and if you're trying to make decisions, if you are that decision maker, for example, a board or an organisation, and you're not catering to the needs of everybody that you're engaging with, I just think there's an ultimate failure there, I suppose. Maybe failure is a bit too strict, but I do believe that if you're trying to engage with young people and you're making a sort of decision on their behalf, you need to have their voice heard in that. And understandably, it can be difficult to do, and it can be somewhat scary to understand a young person and where they're coming from. But they are, what I always say, is the expert of what they are. So they are the expert of being young. They live in that environment. They live and breathe it every day. They know the challenges that they face, and they bring a different perspective. They bring so much innovation and fresh ideas to the table that not even us could think of. You know, people like 5-10 years younger than us that are thinking of these things, and you're like, do you know what, that could be a really good idea. Maybe we'll look at that in further detail. I just think that for Long and Mary, they've not been catered to enough, but more and more they are which is so refreshing to see. So working on like the young people sports panel, working with Sports Scotland and Scottish Athletics and in the sporting environment and in the sporting industry in general, we're really, really good at listening to young people now, which is so positive to see, because back when I started like 5 or 6 years ago, it probably wasn't the case. Even having a conversation with boards at different stages with different groups of people, so myself onto mentoring other young people to speak to the board, the change in their mindset, it's coming fast and thick, which is really exciting to see. And they're more and more wanting to speak to these young people. They're just so uplifting and refreshing, I suppose, to your general way of working, and they can bring so many ideas that it's a waste not to speak to them and not engage with them, especially if you're working for them on their behalf.
Yeah, and I guess talking about the work you did with Sam H and getting them involved in the club, do you think it's important to have these young people in a position where they can be heard, especially when you're talking about sort of athlete well-being? So for young people who are still developing, if their voice isn't heard, then the problems and struggles they have might not be recognized because you don't see it from their position. Do you
Yeah.
think it's important sort of in that sense as well?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. A good example of that is on the Young People's Forum at Scottish Athletics, as one of the focuses is mental health. They also work in conjunction with Sam H, which is really positive. But coming into it, I thought maybe the mental health examples that they would provide would be stress at exams and maybe stress around not competing well or not performing well because it's an individualistic sport. But walking into that environment and listening to their stories, it's so much more. It's about people treating them negatively, it's about eating disorders, it's about so much pressure, and there's so much more to that conversation to have, which even me as a young person in the sport didn't know. I was closed-minded to their struggles as well. So it just goes to show you that having these conversations can open so many doors, and you can be catering to such a wider demographic of people when you do have these conversations. And like you said, like these people are the ones that are developing, and they are living and breathing it at that time. So I think listening to their struggles, as not even struggles, maybe they're positives as well, as it goes along, as they are growing, it makes the world a difference, because they, again, like I always say, they're the experts of what they know. They know what struggles they're facing, and they know what environment. But these young people coming in have faced so much. There's a cost of living crisis, there was COVID, and yeah, it's been a difficult few years just in terms of society. So yeah, they are absolutely the people to speak to and understand them more, because you'll never understand something unless you listen to that lived experience, I think.
Yeah, nice one. And then I guess sort of to round up on this area, obviously you're doing great work with Sam H in your local club, and I know that's happening in other clubs and in other areas within sport across the country. How do you see this sort of
Mm.
connection between mental health and community sport progressing in the future? Do you see it sort of growing and it becoming standard across every club, or do you think there'll be a national approach or something like that? How do you see it progressing?
Currently do believe there is probably a two-pronged approach to it. So there is a national approach, so a lot of organisations will sign up to the SAMH Charter or work with these mental health organisations to try and demonstrate that they cater for the mental health, which is brilliant and it's really positive. In terms of community engagement with these things, it's very fresh, it's very new, it's definitely happening, and it's great to see. My idealistic would be that mental health conversation and working with these organisations becomes the norm, because mental health is the norm. Everybody has it, everybody feels it. So having that conversation, it just comes to you like your health and safety checks or your risk assessment. It's also your risk assessment of your athletes. Are they health and safe? Are they safe? Sorry. In themselves, do they need to have a chat? Are you that person to have the chat? Can you signpost to the relevant people? It will be a brilliant day to see that just become the absolute norm, which it definitely is in a lot of environments. But that's definitely what I see happening over the next few years, I suppose. And definitely the more buy-in we get from the agency, for example, from Sports Scotland and from the governing bodies, so the Scottish governing bodies, it's brilliant to see. So they are the role models. They are showing, they are setting that benchmark, I suppose, for these community groups to follow by, which is brilliant.
Yeah, amazing. Just one more point that I forgot to ask you about as well, which I guess is linked into all this. You spoke about the work you do with Fit for Girls, and something that it's something you were very passionate about when you joined the panel, removing the barriers for girls within sport. Could you talk a wee bit about these barriers and the work you've been doing to help reduce them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do. I'll give you a wee bit of a rundown of what Fit for Girls is, and then I can get into the barriers a wee bit
Awesome,
more.
yeah.
So, Fit for Girls is developed. since 2012, I believe, so just after Commonwealth Games, and it's been in different stages of development over the past few years, but now what it focuses in on is peer-to-peer delivery, empowering and enriching young females within a community environment or within a school environment to be that voice for young females in sport. So it's about providing them the tools and experiences that they need and the skills that they need to be the advocate for females within their environment. So it's a really, really great concept, and it's a really good program in general, and it's had great buy-in across the country as well. So as a tutor, what our roles are is to go out to the group of young girls that typically are girl advocates within their community, and share experiences and talk about barriers and really open that conversation. So one of the most interactive tools that we use is what we call our barrier wall. So it's a physical drawn wall that we do, and we get the young girls to stick all their barriers on it, and it's a really amazing imagery of what girls go through on a day-to-day basis. Again, it touches on listening to that lived experience, and some of the barriers we see repetitively is, I suppose, pressure from male peers, not being included or supported, not having the correct facilities or environment for females to I suppose achieve their best potential, and also a massive one is also like period education. There's just a lack of period education just now, and how to balance that. And you'll know typically a lot of girls will maybe not want to do any physical activity or sport, for example, on their period, and it's about how do we break that barrier to show the benefits that sport and physical activity can have while you're on your period, and looking at that conversation a lot deeper, which it's been really exciting moving forward. So yeah, the barriers are so vast, and every group has different barriers. Typically it can be like self-consciousness as well, it can be body image, but one of the main ones that we see pull out every time is always, I suppose, the pressure from male peers, or I suppose just being like discriminated by their male peers. So boys being like, you're just never going to be as good as me, or you don't deserve to be here as much as I do. Maybe not in those words exactly, but that's the kind of overarching theme. So yeah, it's really, really interesting to see, and it's definitely sparked a conversation to look at how we educate young boys and to support their female peers in sport and physical activity, and make it a better environment for everyone involved. So it's a really exciting project, and it's always constantly developing. We're looking at developing the content more currently right now, so it's really exciting, and I see that going very far because it has had amazing buy-in across the country as well, which has been brilliant.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's been really cool to sort of see it over the last few years, and yourself involved in it massively, sort of almost the face of it, I'd say, Erin. Grows so much, and you see every year more and more girls becoming ambassadors and being a part of it, which is awesome to see, because it's sort of that full cycle where they can get inspired, they can go through the process, and then they're back again to teach it to more people. I think the point you made as well about educating like males as well in school, there's not enough education about periods, I guess, as you said, with girls, but with boys as well. Like, we never experienced it in school here. So then for us to understand what's going on and the changes and the differences it can make, especially in physical activity, it's impossible for some people to know because they've never been taught about it. They don't understand it. So having that sort of full approach, and then these mental barriers of what are people going to think of me can slowly come down, as well as all the other things you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. You're on the ball there.
Okay. So obviously, Erin, as you mentioned at the start, you studied a degree in law at the University of Strathclyde, and now you're 4 months into your job with Scottish Athletics. How did that come about? Like, how did you feel with studying such a difficult thing to then suddenly change to a completely different career path?
Yeah, I know people must think I'm crazy. Honestly, for a good majority of my degree, I would say maybe 2 or 3 years of it, I thought I would go on to be a solicitor. But the truth behind that is, when I started law at Strathclyde, I didn't want, not that I didn't want to do law, but it wasn't the path that I suppose I was always passionate about. I think I got encouraged to do my legal degree through school and people around me, and not to say that I didn't have passions in law, because I have a thirst for learning about society and learning about how it's regulated, and modern studies and sociology was massively like important to me during high school. So I think that's what sparked that. And looking forward, obviously that all links into sport in some sort of way. So for the first couple of years, I was like, right, I'll be a solicitor, and looking at it. I suppose as I learned more and more and more, my passions just outshined, I suppose, the want for being a lawyer. There was behind that was probably the idea of the salary that law comes from, and just being secure financially moving forward is brilliant. Not to say that working in a sport doesn't bring that same security, it absolutely does. But I think at the end of the day, when I started, I suppose, working in more of a leadership development role and my voluntary role, so looking after the YPF and being a mentor on the young people sports panel, I worked so closely with these people that were sports development managers and sports development leads, and looking at sports development as a general and sports management, and just absolutely falling in love with it. There was just such a spark there with me in sports management. We have a really good relationship, I suppose, and there was just something I had to go for. And I decided in my last year that maybe I'll come back to law, maybe I will, but I was going to go on and study a sports management degree at the University of Edinburgh. So that was the next step in the path for me, and that was a year's course, and I suppose it was somewhat of a delay to see what I wanted to do as a career, because 100% you had that fear of missing out of being a lawyer. A lot of my friends were going on to complete their diploma and become solicitors, and I was like, well, what if that's for me and that's not for me? And it's the fear of the unknown. You just don't know, I suppose, until you try. And then this job came up. I know we were chatting about it before. Luckily, the girl that was in the role before me got a job at Sport Scotland, and this job came up, which was unexpected for us all. And I was just like, I have to go for it. There's just something pulling me towards it. I knew the team really, really well, and the environment I knew really well. So it was an easy, I suppose, decision for me to be like, I'll go for it. Do you know what? I probably won't get it anyway, but it's great experience for the interview. My first professional interview, and then I was surprised. I got a phone call later on that day, and I got the job. And yeah, I suppose I shocked myself at that point. I was just like in awe. I was like, oh my God, I'm following my dreams here. I'm going to work in sport. This is phenomenal. And do you know what? Working in the job has lived up to the expectations that I had of it. It's been brilliant. It's an organisation that cares so much about you and cares about your mental health and supporting you through your journey. This is my first professional job, and my line manager is absolutely brilliant. He's always there if I need a chat, as well as all the other colleagues that I work with that are just they're so supportive, and because they've known me for a wee while as well, I think that relationship was already there, which has been brilliant. And yeah, the flexibility of working in sport is brilliant as well. Like there was just so many pros, I suppose, that weighed out the cons for working here, and I'm absolutely loving it. So we'll see where this world takes me. I absolutely believe I'll be working in sport for a very long time, but you never know, I might become a sports lawyer in the future.
Yeah, I guess you always got it there to come back to. But I
Yeah.
think the point you made about sort of the financial backing of going into a role such as law is very true. It's what a lot of young people sort of decide. They'll see a degree and they'll look at, well, what's the salary in 5 years, 10 years time, and it can be so tempting to go with that. But I think, like you've shown, if you follow your passion, and Erin, I know where you'll be in 10 years time. If you follow that passion, keep with it, you'll be successful, and that financial thing won't become a problem. One, because you just enjoy what you do every day, and two, because if you're good at what you do, you'll be fine, you'll be looked after, you'll be in a good position. So yeah, I think it's great just how you've stuck with it and you've gone with it. Was the sort of, I know you mentioned about looking at doing your sports management thing at Edinburgh. Was there like a single point, or like just one night where it was like, this is a decision, or was it sort of a gradual, you just kept leaning towards it, and then you were like, yeah, this is what I want to do?
I think it was more gradual than snap decision. I'm not a snap decision sort of person. I suppose I need a lot of thought and processing behind it. And it's a big decision to walk away from. I say walk away, that's probably the wrong word, is just take a step back from being a lawyer and actually pursuing your passions. And it's something I feel like probably not talked about often. Like everyone supposes that they'll probably go into law and become a lawyer and become a solicitor. So more and more, and I suppose there was an almost guilt behind that of being like, "Oh, I just don't think I want to do this." Not that I've not loved it, and I loved my experience at university. It was really, really good, and the course was challenging but so rewarding and so informative, and I just learned a lot from it. So it's definitely more of a gradual thing, and speaking to the people around me and just having those mentors and role models that nobody told me you need to do this or you need to do that. And that's what I loved as well. It's about where do you want to see yourself working, and where do you follow your passions. And like you said, like every day I go into work excited, and I'm excited to work in some sort of development of sport, and I fortunately get paid for it now as well, which is just, it's phenomenal. And I suppose it's a dream come true that I never knew I really had to start with. But it just goes to show you that your goals can change and differ as you move along. And following your passion is so important as well. Like I've seen so many people in their roles and in their jobs that don't love it, and they wake up every day and they're maybe like upset or burnt out by their job. And I haven't experienced that yet. And I suppose as the way that I've been supported and looked after in this job, I don't think I'll ever get to that point. So yeah, it's just a really exciting time for me just now, and being such a fresh professional and following those passions. But not to say that decision wasn't terrifying to make, because it absolutely was. But luckily it was the right decision for me.
Yeah, amazing. And can you tell me a bit about sort of your everyday role with Scottish Athletics, and sort of, I guess, how the experiences you've built up before translate into this role as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So funnily enough, I am technically a development manager, so I'm a national club manager, is what my title is, and I look after around 65 different clubs across the country. So, like I was saying earlier, all these clubs are running at different ages and stages. So some clubs run like mini businesses, and it's looking at business development as a general, and some clubs are just not at that stage yet, and it's about supporting them through that process. So there's a lot of governance behind it, and there's a lot of policy, and it's about explaining these policies and educating these clubs, and looking at the pathway that they're going to follow and the development phase that they're going to follow, and how I can support them through that. So it links into my degree quite nicely in that sense. I also line manage 4 different people that cover 7 different clubs. So using my experience of employment law and writing partnership agreements and looking at contracts has been fundamental to that as well. So like I said, I stepped away from law, but I still 100% use it in my everyday. And then in terms of more sports development, I look after 5 different national projects, and they all vary quite differently. Some of them are the Island Support Network, which is looking at how we support our more rural clubs. I've got our new Run Jump Throw programme launching next year, which is so exciting because it's completely rebranded to be more inclusive and more accessible. I also look after the Scottish Student Sport Partnership as well, so still engaging with universities and working with young people and looking about how to create better opportunities for young people in university. So yeah, it varies every single day, and there's such a spark to it, and no day is 100% the same, which I absolutely love. So yeah, it's been such a great experience. You can probably see my face. I'm absolutely in awe with my job. I absolutely love it. And because every day is so different, it keeps me excited and it keeps me passionate, which is so fun.
Yeah, amazing. Run, jump, throw. That takes me back. Wow.
I
And
know.
I don't. And to be honest, Erin, I don't think I've ever spoken to you when you've not had a massive smile on your face and full of energy. But the fact that it's still going now when you're in a full-time job is a good sign, I guess.
Oh, brilliant.
Just to sort of, I guess, bring everything to a conclusion. You've spoken so much about your opportunities you've had, the importance of young people and young people's well-being in athletics and involved in decision making, and then just about sort of balancing things with university and following your passion as well. What would be your advice to, I guess, more of a young person who's maybe a bit sure about their career path to go on, what they should do? whether they should follow their passion or maybe go with a more structured and secured degree. What would be your advice to a young person and how to approach this tough decision making time?
Yeah, 100%. I think do your research, really thoroughly look at what a career will look like. Speak to the people within the career. If you go in close-minded and don't really understand what it's going to be like, you might not enjoy it as much. You might be lucky in that sense, but I suppose definitely do your research, and that involves speaking to as many people as possible, making those connections and understanding the job 100%, and maybe even going to a careers advisor and speaking to them thoroughly, but 100% you need to love what you're doing. I am so fortunate to love my job and really follow my passion. And if that is something that a young person can do moving forward or leaving university, then I would 100% encourage that. But speak to the people around you, make those connections, speak to the people in the industry you want to work in, and really just, throw yourself in the deep end and say, like we like to say, George, say yes to those opportunities if they arise, and really just go for it. I suppose you know the most about yourself, and you know where you're comfortable and what you want for yourself and your goals. So just having that clear parameters that you know where you can work to and looking into the future is so important.
Amazing. And finally, obviously, with all your work with these clubs, what would be your sort of one piece of advice to someone who's got influence or involved in an organization, whether it's within sport, without sport, a big organization or something more local? What would be your one piece of advice when it comes to sort of supporting well-being amongst people involved?
Have that open conversation. Don't make a taboo about it, and try your best to not stigmatize it. Mental health is so normal, everybody has it, and just being open and honest about it. I suppose if you demonstrate your honesty and authenticity about that conversation, then other people will replicate that back to you. So just be as open and transparent and honest about it as possible, and really encourage everyone around you to be the same and be that role model for other people.
Amazing. Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been amazing to speak to you, hear you gain your sort of inspiration and all your positivity about your career and everything you've achieved. And hopefully listeners will pick up on that too, and just, I guess, follow your passion at the end of the day. So thank you so much
No,
for joining
absolutely.
us
Thank you
today,
for
and
having me. This is brilliant. Yeah.
awesome.